13 years ago, on a damp October morning in the coastal town of Avalon Bay, Caleb Monroe was handcuffed in the fish market and dragged away like a wild animal, under the gaze of the very people who had shared beers with him just the Friday before. Not a single soul spoke up. No one intervened. Everything unfolded as if people had been anticipating that scene for a long time. Even Avery, his girlfriend, whom he planned to propose to that weekend, stood frozen as he turned to look for her one last time. In his pocket, he still had the diamond ring he had saved for 2 years to buy. In that moment, Caleb didn't know that he had just stepped into a hell with no exit. The police accused him of trafficking fentanyl for an interstate drug ring. Irrefutable evidence was found in the fishing boat warehouse where Caleb worked as a technical manager. 3 kilograms of pure fentanyl, hidden in boxes of electronic equipment that he himself had signed for the previous week. An anonymous tipster called at exactly 3 a.m. providing the exact address and warehouse code. The investigation was led by Assistant District Attorney Adam Rourke, an ambitious man with eyes as cold as ice. Everything proceeded swiftly, leaving no room for doubt. Caleb's court-appointed lawyer was an old man on the verge of retirement, who met him for only 15 minutes before the trial. "Plead guilty," he whispered. 25 years is better than life. And within just 3 weeks, Caleb was sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole, transferred directly to a maximum security federal prison in Alaska, Fortress White, a place not listed on any map, where sunlight only appeared 4 months a year. No one visited him. Not a single letter. Not a single explanation. His mother, Sarah Monroe, the strong woman who had raised him alone after his father died in a work accident, died of a stroke just 6 months later. Caleb learned the news from a television broadcast in the prison's common dining hall. No family members informed him. Avery vanished from all contact as if she had never existed. The letters he sent were all returned with a recipient refused stamp. Her phone number changed. Her social media accounts were locked. Even the small apartment they had shared was sold within 2 months. From a 25-year-old on the verge of having it all, a stable job, true love, and the dream of building a family, Caleb became a nameless number in the ice and darkness. Prisoner number 4471, B, Level 6 detention, not allowed contact with the outside world. The first few months in prison were true hell. Caleb was completely isolated, confined to a 2 by 3 meter concrete room with only a small window slit looking out at a gray wall. He ate only 2 meals a day, slept on a paper-thin mattress, and slowly felt his sanity unravel. The longest nights were when he lay staring at the ceiling, wondering what he had done wrong to deserve this fate. He recalled every detail of the day he was arrested, searching for clues, searching for reasons. But everything was like a jigsaw puzzle missing its final piece. It wasn't until his second year that he met Jeremiah Doc Banks, an eccentric law professor, imprisoned for leaking classified government documents. He was a thin, white-haired man with eyes as sharp as steel, living quietly on the lowest floor of the solitary confinement unit, where only those legally buried alive resided. Doc was serving a life sentence for leaking thousands of classified documents about illegal CIA activities in the 1990s. He had been a law professor at Harvard, a genius in international finance and constitutional law, but now he was just a ghost in the dark prison corridor. Caleb initially paid no mind to the old man, but on the night he intended to commit suicide with a razor blade he'd hidden from a shaver after secretly sharpening it for 3 weeks, Doc stopped him with just one sentence. "Do you want to die like a pawn, or live to become the player?" That sentence was like a lightning bolt in the dark night. Caleb dropped the blade, looking directly into Doc's sharp eyes. "What did you say? You think you're here for your crime?" Doc chuckled softly, a joyless laugh. "Or for someone else's?" From that night on, Caleb's life began to change. 3 years later, Caleb was no longer the bewildered young man he once was. Under Doc's quiet tutelage, he studied law, from the U.S. Constitution to international financial law. He learned programming, from basic Python to advanced hacking techniques. He learned finance, from market analysis to complex investment strategies. Each passing day was a brick laid for a future he hadn't dared to believe was real. Doc taught him not just knowledge, but also a philosophy of life. True power is not the ability to destroy your enemies, but the ability to make them destroy themselves. Doc told him about wrongful convictions across America, about how the justice system could be bought and manipulated. He showed him the connections between politics, finance, and media, the invisible threads that controlled society. They didn't kill you. Doc said one night as heavy snow fell outside the iron window because they thought you were already dead. Let that dying self sleep and resurrect as someone they won't recognize. But the most important thing Doc taught him wasn't a skill, but patience. Revenge isn't a dish to be eaten hot, he often said. It's wine that needs to be aged for years to have the perfect flavor. In his 8th year, Doc was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. In his final months, he dedicated all his time to imparting his last secrets to Caleb. "You know why I trust you?" Doc asked one afternoon, his voice weak from chemotherapy. "Because you didn't ask me if I was guilty. You only asked me how to survive." When Doc died of cancer, he left Caleb more than just knowledge. In his old sleeve, he hid a small USB drive containing the password to a cryptocurrency wallet. Assets worth over $70 million. Money Doc had accumulated through secret financial consulting for international organizations before his arrest. For someone who has lost everything, Doc's last letter read, "and is ready to create everything from nothing." But along with the immense fortune, Doc also left another secret, an encrypted file containing information about Caleb's case. Information that he could only decrypt when he was ready. Caleb escaped from prison on a snowy night in his 8th year, not by digging a tunnel or climbing walls, but by turning himself into a dead man. He had prepared this plan for 6 months. Using medical knowledge learned from Doc and other inmates, he created a drug that could slow his heart rate to an almost undetectable level. On that horrific snowy night, when all the prison's electrical systems failed, Caleb performed a perfect, fake death. He was taken to the prison morgue, where a forensic doctor, whom Doc had quietly contacted beforehand, helped him resurrect and escape the complex in a truck carrying corpses. The system recorded him as having drowned while attempting to escape through the drainage system. His body was not found due to being swept away in the icy water. Caleb Monroe was officially dead on paper, and from the ashes of that death, Elias Ward was born. 3 months later, an anonymous investor with a deep voice and a smile as cold as steel appeared in Avalon Bay. Elias Ward, a man in an expensive suit but wearing old combat boots, driving a matte black Range Rover with no license plates. No one recognized Caleb. 13 years in prison had completely changed his appearance: salt and pepper hair, a neatly trimmed beard, a more robust physique, and most importantly, his eyes. The eyes of a man who had seen the deepest depths of darkness and survived. Even Logan Hart, now a strong candidate for mayor, succeeding his father, only shook his hand as if he were a complete stranger. Logan had changed a lot. From the friendly young man he once was, he was now an ambitious politician with a fake smile and a cold hand. Elias Ward invested in everything: coastal restaurant chains, bayfront real estate, digital media companies specializing in unearthing the truth, and even the bars where Caleb's betrayers still frequented. Within just 3 months, he controlled 40% of Avalon Bay's domestic cash flow, and no one understood why. But it wasn't by chance, it was strategy. Every investment had a purpose. Every deal was a step in his perfect revenge plan. Vincent Crane, the accountant who had embezzled and framed Caleb, was the first to fall. He was now 45, working at a small financial consulting firm, still living in fear that someone would discover what he had done 13 years ago. Elias Ward approached Vincent not with force or threats, but by becoming his company's biggest client. A $5 million investment in projects Vincent proposed, making him the employee of the year. But it was all a trap. Elias had intentionally created misguided investments, based on false information that he himself provided. When the market collapsed exactly as he predicted, Vincent's company went bankrupt in just 48 hours. Not only that, but regulatory agencies also discovered a series of irregularities in the financial records, irregularities that Elias had cleverly planted. Vincent tried to commit suicide with sleeping pills on the night his company went bankrupt, but was saved with severe psychiatric sequelae. He was removed from all financial management positions in Tillamook County and had to live with a lifelong obsession with the night he decided to frame an innocent man. Adam Rourke, Now a candidate for federal judge, was at the peak of his career. He had a beautiful wife, 2 young children, and an unblemished reputation in the legal world. But Elias Ward knew that every person had a weakness. For Rourke, it was ambition and arrogance. Elias's media company began investigating a series of cases Rourke had handled, ostensibly to honor the career of an excellent prosecutor, but in reality to dig into the hidden corners. And then they found it, an old video secretly recorded by a security camera, showing Rourke signing a search warrant for Caleb Monroe without a valid court order. Not only that, the video also recorded him receiving an envelope from a mysterious man, a man Elias had identified as a member of the Hart family. The news station owned by Elias aired the exclusive during prime time with the headline "Future Judge and the Ghost of the Past." Within 24 hours, Rourke's election campaign collapsed like a sandcastle. He withdrew from the race and announced he would spend time with family. But Elias didn't stop there. He knew that Rourke was just a pawn. The real mastermind behind the conspiracy had yet to be revealed. Logan Hart, Caleb's former best friend, was now a successful politician. He married Avery just 1 year after Caleb's arrest, in a lavish wedding praised by local newspapers as the wedding of the century. But that marriage was merely an iron cage adorned with roses. Avery didn't love Logan, and Logan knew it. He kept her captive with subtle control, monitoring her phone, locking her bank accounts, isolating her friends, and most importantly, the implicit threat that if she left, he would ensure she'd never find work in town. But he didn't know that Avery still kept the necklace Caleb gave her in a locked wooden box hidden beneath the bedroom floorboards. He also didn't know that every night, when he was drunk and asleep, she would rewatch the video of Caleb's failed proposal the day before his arrest and cry silently. Elias managed to approach Avery through a casual interview organized by his media outlet about successful women behind politicians. In her eyes, he saw immediate recognition, a flash of recognition that couldn't be hidden. But she said nothing. No questions. No tears. She simply greeted him by his new name with a sad smile. "Nice to see you again, Elias." That sentence was like an arrow piercing his heart. In her voice, he heard everything, the suffering, the regret, and a love that never faded. That night, Logan went berserk. He knew something was wrong. His politician's instinct made him sensitive to every change, and the way Avery looked at Elias Ward was not how she looked at anyone else. He hired a private detective to follow Elias and discovered a clue from a small scar on his right wrist, a scar only Caleb had from a childhood accident when the two boys were riding bikes together. But before he could act, Logan received an unmarked parcel. Inside was a copy of his father's bank statement from 13 years ago, showing a $50,000 transfer to an account on the exact day before Caleb's arrest. Along with it was a handwritten note from his father, "Paid Vincent. Caleb will take the fall for us." Logan panicked. He finally understood the conspiracy his father had orchestrated. Framing Caleb was not just to cover up Vincent's embezzlement, but also to pave the way for his own political career. With Caleb, who was considered the most promising in Avalon Bay's younger generation, out of the picture, Logan became the only choice for future leadership. In despair, Logan decided to kidnap Avery, giving Elias an ultimatum: withdraw all your investments, reveal your true identity, and leave Avalon Bay forever. Otherwise, she dies. Caleb arrived at the rendezvous point alone, an old coastal warehouse where they had played as children. No gun, no bodyguards, just a phone with a live stream set to automatically broadcast publicly after 10 minutes. Logan stood in the shadows, his hand trembling with a gun, Avery tied to an old wooden chair. Her eyes looked at Caleb with a mixture of fear and hope. "What you're afraid of isn't me," Caleb said, his voice as calm as still water, his eyes fixed on Logan. "But everyone knowing who you really are. Who do you think you are?" Logan roared, the gun pointed directly at Caleb's chest. "You're dead. You have no right to come back here." "I didn't come back," Caleb smiled coldly. "I never left. I've been here, in every wrong decision you've made, in every sleepless night you've spent with a guilty conscience." Logan trembled. "I had no choice. My father said." "Your father is dead," Caleb cut him off. "But his sins are not. And now you must pay for everything." Just then, the police stormed in, not by chance, but because Caleb's live stream had garnered 1.2 million viewers in just 5 minutes. Everyone saw Logan threatening with a gun. Everyone heard the confession of the 13-year-old conspiracy. Logan was arrested on charges of kidnapping, threatening another's life, and became the subject of a criminal investigation for alleged involvement in a conspiracy to harm a citizen. But what completely broke him was not the legal charges, but the fact that the entire town of Avalon Bay, the people who had once revered the Hart family, now turned their backs on him. In that live stream with 1.2 million views, people not only saw Logan threatening with a gun, but also heard him confess to his family's 13-year-old conspiracy. Major newspapers ran headlines like, "Second generation of corruption," and "When justice is bought and sold like goods." Avery was rescued, but she didn't cry, didn't scream like people usually do in movies. She just looked at Caleb with eyes full of gratitude mixed with deep sadness. "You've paid too high a price for this," she whispered. But the story wasn't over. A week after Logan's detention, Caleb received a special package. The sender was Vincent Crane, the person he had handled first in his revenge plan. Inside the envelope was a letter written in a trembling hand. "Caleb, or should I call you Elias? I know you think I went crazy after the bankruptcy, but in fact I've been saner than ever. There's something I need you to know about Doc Banks." According to the letter, Vincent had investigated Caleb's case backward after being punished. He discovered that Doc Banks wasn't in that prison by chance. He was planted there by the CIA to access useful inmates, people who could be turned into tools. "Doc didn't save you from death. He saved you to turn you into a weapon." Caleb reread those lines, his hands trembling. Was everything Doc taught him, from legal knowledge, finance, to the philosophy of revenge, just to put him in this exact position? But then he remembered Doc's words before he died. "You think I taught you to become someone else? No. I only taught you how to become yourself in the most complete way." Perhaps the truth lay somewhere in between. Doc might have had his own agenda, but the affection he showed Caleb, that was real. And most importantly, whatever Doc's scheme, what Caleb did all stemmed from his own decisions. Just as Caleb was pondering Doc, a new threat emerged. Horizon Accord, the secret organization he had once refused to cooperate with, now viewed him as a lost asset that needed to be reclaimed. One night, as Caleb and Avery slept in their temporary home in Portland, the bedroom window suddenly shattered. 3 masked men stormed in, guns cocked. "Elias Ward," the leader said in a distorted electronic voice. "You refused our offer, but now we're not asking for your opinion." But they had underestimated Caleb. 13 years in prison and years of preparing for revenge had transformed him into a completely different person. In the darkness, he moved like a panther, using everything in the room as a weapon. The fight lasted only 3 minutes. When the lights came on, all 3 attackers were unconscious. Caleb stood in the middle of the room, holding a gun, his eyes cold as ice. "Tell Horizon," he said into the earpiece of one of them, "that Elias Ward is dead. All that's left is a man who wants peace." After that incident, Caleb realized he stood at a crucial crossroads. He could continue to fight, turning himself into a symbol of unofficial justice, accumulating enemies for the rest of his life. Or he could choose another path, a path Doc had never taught him. "What do you want?" Avery asked that night as they cleaned up the shattered glass together. "I want to disappear," Caleb replied, "not as Elias Ward, a revenger, but as an ordinary man. I want to learn to live for today, instead of for what's past." And that's exactly what they did. Using a portion of the remaining assets from Doc's legacy, they bought a small house in a coastal town in Nova Scotia, Canada, a place where no one knew Caleb Monroe or Elias Ward. Caleb became a boat mechanic. Avery opened a small bookstore. They married in a simple ceremony with only 2 witnesses, an elderly couple who were their neighbors. 10 years later, on an autumn afternoon, Caleb sat on the porch, watching his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, play with their golden retriever. Avery sat beside him, her hand resting on her swollen belly, their second child due soon. "Daddy," Emma ran over. "Why do you have so many scars?" Caleb looked down at his hands, the marks of 13 years of hell and years of revenge. Then he looked up, seeing the innocent curiosity in his daughter's eyes. "Because I once had to learn to be strong," he said. "But now I've learned something more important." "What is it?" "How to love." Caleb Monroe died in an Alaskan prison. Elias Ward died after completing his mission of revenge. All that remained was a father, a husband, A boat mechanic named David Matthews, a man who had learned that true happiness lies not in destroying the past, but in building the future. And sometimes, the most perfect revenge is living a good life, despite everything that tried to destroy you. The story Elias Ward, Return from Hell, is not just about revenge, but about redemption. It's about how people can choose who they become regardless of the circumstances that have placed them.